Okay. It's usually I always have to be the one to start the conversation. Now, as you were saying, Jan, that there's this, you're leaving kind of your legacy with the institution, and that gives you a great relief, as far as I understand. But I was also wondering for Suzanne. I mean, we're all wondering what this means, and this is why what we're trying to figure out here. But also, what would be the criteria for taking on such a responsibility in general? That with the MVRDV collection, this is a start, and so you will go into taking all, let's say, all available digital materials that relate to architecture in the Netherlands, or do you have some targeted projects or project offices that you think you would take this responsibility with? Because it is an enormous responsibility, and as we've been thinking through this process for SALT, which apparently this is not just an architecture archiving institution, so we have other responsibilities as well. At moments it feels like maybe there's a time when the institution is more, let's say, a teacher, but not the actual collector. I don't know if you also have a feeling, or the tradition with Het Nieuwe Instituut'e of almost maybe 200 years is a different measure. That's what I was wondering.
There's not one answer, but I think also this it's very interesting to have this perspective next to each other, from me as an institution and the theorist on archives and the maker of archives, in a way. It's a huge responsibility, and that's why our collection policy, which is based on making choices, dare to make choices. You cannot preserve and save everything, and you need courage to say, well, only this and only this layer, and so on and so forth. And well, there are hierarchies. Also within the archive of MVRDV, we don't collect all projects, and we don't collect the files of all files of all projects. No. We have this also very regular systems to make this selection.
Can I just remind you that one of the conditions actually was that at least for each project there would be a project book.
Yes. So that we in our Star Architects files, we also always document a whole oeuvre. And a whole list of projects, and yes, from all projects of MVRDV we do the project books, but that's only like one shelf, no, a few shelves of. But what I think, and I think more and more the most interesting part of the archive are the videos, all the tapes of the people telling about the works. I'm happy that also this lecture of Jan is recorded, because then suddenly the material comes alive. And that's what we always do, more and more, and also more systematic. If we start to acquire archive, we interview the architects. We always collect contextual material, like the stories of the makers, especially themselves. Because only like a model or an object is nothing without well, I think more and more than is nothing without the human story behind it. And happily, MVRDV has a very good communication department, and they collected all the videos. When I'm all architects giving lectures, isn't it true? You have a beautiful film, oral history part of the archive. And to tell you the truth, that's, to me, one of my most favorite parts of the archive.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wonder, seyircilerden soru sormak isteyen olur mu diye merak ediyorum. En arkadan başlıyoruz. Öne kadar bu 3 soruyu alacağımızı düşünüyorum. Maybe you would need to listen.
Teşekkürler. Katılımcılara geldikleri için teşekkür ediyorum. İlk sorum Bayan Mulder olacak.
Maybe Suzanne, if you can also listen from the translation.
My first question will be for Suzanne. If I'm not mistaken, you said that the digital content are saved in PDF format. For long-term preservation, have you had any difficulty keeping it in this format? For digital preservation, using it in PDF format, have you had any difficulties, any problems? And what other formats are you using other than PDF? This is my first question. The second question is for all speakers. Okay, let's do it one by one.
So the first question, Suzanne, was...
Where is the person who asked the question?
Elinizi kaldırabilir misiniz?
Oh, there. Oh, to where am I listening? PDFs. I am not very much into the practical and technical aspects of digital archive. I'm sorry for that. We have our expert, so I cannot say how good a PDF is, how sustainable PDF is. But in the digital archivist world, a PDF is considered as the most sustainable format there exists. And And there are like architecture collections who asked architects to hand over their whole digital collection in PDFs. So they do. Victoria and Albert, for example, they just acquire PDFs of everything. So it's very flat. You would never do that.
İkinci sorunuz neydi?
So, yeah.
The second question is for all the speakers.
Archive materials, as a result of long-term preservation, there are some discussions around losing their authenticity. My PhD is about that. I'm not asking it architecture per se, but in general, archive materials. Have you had any hesitations, like when you see a material, if they were produced or not? And what would be the solutions if they had this problem?
This is addressed to anyone who would like to.
That's a very good question, because the new institute was very much discussing that in the beginning with us, that they said, well, if a project was conceived in program X version 2, then we need to preserve it in program X version 2. And we said, well, it doesn't matter. So there was on the museum side a much stronger idea that the authenticity of the software needed to be preserved, whereas we are maybe more interested in the idea.
Well, yeah, we are still discussing this topic. It's a difficult question about authenticity and digital archives. What is the authentic thing? And because I also think it's about the way how we provide context with the documents. That is how we can be a good institute, and not so much the real software. But some software has this special look and feel that sometimes you want to keep the look and feel of a specific digital document. But then you have to analyze what it is.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I love this question. And I'm really happy that you're also doing a PhD about the subject, because I think it's super important to talk about. And my experience comes mostly from art museums, and authenticity, of course, is there with the main thing that you have to adhere to. However, though, personally, I agree much more with Jan. It's like you have to find other ways to translate this, because especially within more digital software, you won't be able to play it anymore at a certain point, to use it anymore at a certain point. So you have to come to terms with that. So rather than completely focusing on preserving the software and the hardware, because one goes with the other, I think it's much more important and interesting as well to look for what are the essentials within this type of work, and how can we make a translation out of that still preserves some of the sort of intentions of the creator in a way. On the other hand, most museums won't do it. Most museums will go into the technicity of the thing, the technical aspects, and they will be able to preserve it. And in that instance, also coming back to your earlier questions about the PDF, I think it's one of the worst things to do, because you won't have anything anymore soon. I mean, PDF is not sustainable at all. And you kind of lose the essence, in a way, of the work that you translate into PDF. So I think rather than just saying, like, okay, this is going to be the standard and this is how we want it, it's going to be much more interesting to talk to the architect or artist, whoever, to see, okay, how are we going to preserve this? It takes a lot of time, but I think you come to a more interesting result.
Can I add that when I saw this image that Suzanne used for the, was it Asymptote, with the video player, it makes the work look very, very old-fashioned and also very modern at the same time. As if you put it into this context, in a way you don't really, you add a lot of history to it, whereas maybe you don't see it as a solitary piece anymore. It's a choice, no?
Başka eller görmüştüm. Devam edebiliriz. Burada bir soru var. Cem önde bir soru var. Elinizi kaldırır mısınız? Size söz verdim.
First, let me tell you that I really enjoyed the presentation. It was something really new for me. And you talked about preserving the projects and videos, but you also talked in your presentation about installations. So have you really decided in what way are you going to archive them? Or because during the whole presentation, that was the only thing that I was thinking about.
Well, it's still a case study. No, we haven't made final decisions yet. And we haven't found the final solutions yet. This specific installation of Metacity Data Town I showed as installation art. I needed the architect who worked on it to explain me how it worked. So again, we are searching the technicalities behind this project, because the essence of this project is this three-dimensional immersive spatial environment. And but this project is kept like thousands of CDs, because they are rendered, and as also Jan told, that the earlier machines took days, weeks, years to make all these renderings, and this installation consists of many renderings that are put behind one another and made an animation out of it. So it's a whole storeroom of all this original, but all with hundreds of CDs. And of course, that's not the way to preserve this specific installation. And this is an example of first analyzing what the essence is of this project, and then deciding how to preserve it in a way that that you keep this essential characteristics of this work. Is it an answer to your question?
It would be great to see it again one day and walk in it. Yeah.
Yan taraf, siz galiba sorunuz hala varsa oraya mikrofon.
I was just wondering about if this archive is going to be a continuously mirror archive of MVRDV. For example, if you clear all the data from the past and come to today, and are you going to mirror today to today, or is it just a procedure between you and MVRDV from the beginning of MVRDV to 2017? This is the first question, and the other question is for Jan. Is this procedure, you think, going to affect your architects' behaviors in the workflow, that they will think, oh, this is going to be archived, so I shouldn't give that name to this file, or some kind of stuff?
Well, to come to your first question, we said that we would send project 1 to 400 of the 675 to the new institute, so that liberates us very nicely. But it's also because it's digital, we still have it in the office. So it's not like, unlike the analog archive we lose, in a way, it's gone, it's not in the basement anymore. The digital archive is still with us. They, of course, have the original, we have the copy.
I don't know.
And the other question, I hope that the staff is not actually behaving differently, because that would be bad if they think, oh, this is going to end up in a collection and therefore I have to treat it in a certain way. That would instantly lose a lot of authenticity. So we will not encourage any weird behavior.
Başka sorusu olan var mı? Evet, mikrofon olmazsa ses kayda girmiyor, onun için lütfen.
The positive thing about this digital archiving is seeing the design process.
Yes.
I'm wondering about which version you would keep in. Sometimes it happens that you could have hundreds of the same project files. And it's not the keeping of the one version, but it's actually trying to see the differentiation between, I mean, the process of the evolution of the project, which is in your hands. You can, if you can make something out of those files, and that means creating a new sort of software that will read through and make an animation of how it went through these versions and changes. How do you go through each file, each version, even when we go back to our own files? You know, we don't see what did we change in between the two of them. How can somebody else really work through that?
Yes,
it's a
course,
big question.
Yeah. And well, again, also in this specific archive, because the archive becomes so much more diverse and big, and the design process and reconstructing the ideas behind the design has so many layers. In this specific case of MVRDV, it's very important that the architects help us to understand. And we have chosen like 10 key projects, which we discuss project by project, file by file with the makers, to explain and help us to identify the key documents.
Suzanne is not popular in our office.
No.
They think it's really terrible work.
But the interviews and the files we did were so it was very important, and yes, we try to continue.
I think this links back to my first question, because the responsibility in the end is mutual, and especially
Yes,
when
it's
we're talking
mutual.
about
Yeah.
the digital archive. As you were both, all three of you were saying that you're archiving something that you think will matter a little later into the future, and the advantage is that we're sitting here all together at this
Yes.
moment. The traditional way we had to do, for instance,
Yes.
while collecting the architecture archive here, is most of the time after the maker is no longer with us, and that's probably the most difficult way to work on projects. I think this has been, I mean, this was wonderful, all three of, all their contributions, because this kind of dissected the matter into the more important bits that I think we need to keep thinking about, both at HNI, at SALT, and all the other institutions that are dealing with this. I wonder if you have any closing remarks of your own. Then I think maybe it's been one of those 2-hour things that maybe we need to release everyone. But please, if you have last comments, we would love to hear them.
Well, again, this cooperation, it's not only our responsibility. I think your concluding remark is very good. More than ever, we have to work together with the people who make the archives, but also the people who use the archives. So that's this new project. We will much more also make decisions in a network of other people.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Thank you all also for coming and staying with us. I think we can go.
Thank you.